are not ideal for the Trump campaign right now. Trump is slightly ahead of Hillary Clinton in the polls as of Monday, July 25th, but that's after the Republican National Convention and before the Democratic National Convention, where we can expect that Hillary might get a bump in the polls herself. So Donald Trump really needed a game changer to join him on the ticket. The problem is, the game's already been changed. Donald Trump is nothing like any presidential nominee we've ever seen and completely lacks political credentials. Instead, his skills are in media manipulation, exciting the base, and drawing attention to himself. So, how do you change the game from there? You need someone on the ticket who does the exact opposite. Which begs the question, who the hell is Mike Pence? Howdy gang, if you're like me, you probably responded to Donald Trump picking Indiana Governor Mike Pence as his running mate with a resounding "What?" Donald Trump's campaign has been nothing if not shocking for the entire past year. When you've built a campaign on deporting Mexicans, banning Muslims, mocking disabled reporters, speculating about the menstrual cycles of debate moderators, dismissing war heroes, praising dictators, waxing poetic about shooting people on Fifth Avenue, building a wall, making it 10 feet taller, putting a big beautiful door on it, quoting 2 Corinthians, wanting to fuck your daughter, claiming ignorance about KKK endorsements, retweeting anti-Semitic imagery, and making this face, who could you possibly pick to shake things up? That's just the problem. There's no one Trumpier than Trump. In fact, for a while, Ivanka Trump was legitimately being floated as a potential VP possibility. Can you imagine trying to Trump? In reality, Sarah Palin is probably the next best thing to just cloning Donald Trump himself. Both she and Donald Trump are like watching a literal train wreck compete on The Bachelor. You can't stop watching and you hate yourself for it. But unfortunately for cable news ratings and schadenfreude, Donald Trump and Sarah Palin have only appeared together on the campaign trail the one time.
Where in the private sector you actually have to balance budgets in order to prioritize to keep the main thing the main thing. And he knows the main thing, a president is to keep us safe economically and militarily. He knows the main thing, and he knows how to lead the charge. So troops, hang in there because help's on the way, because he, better than anyone, isn't he known for being able to command fire?
What? I think that was a single sentence. That was Palin-ese for Donald Trump would run the military like a business. Can you imagine if she was writing legislation? The Affordable Care Act would become, oh, the big old bill that'll just bring our country together and get our doctors medically and healthily on track to make sure, because we want to know that our Americans are still being our Americans. And isn't America known for having our hospitals? So yeah, that wasn't an option, but there are other mini-Trumps out there. Newt Gingrich, for example, as he does, managed to make himself relevant yet again somehow during this election cycle by touting himself as Donald Trump's potential VP. But the problem is that Donald Trump is a very modern candidate, while Newt Gingrich just screams 90s, especially when you consider his difficulties with modern technology.
We're really puzzled here at Gingrich Productions. We've spent weeks trying to figure out, what do you call this? I've been calling it a handheld computer.
So unfortunately, Newt Gingrich had to put away his handheld computer and drive his motorized carriage back to his brick-and-mortar hut for another 4-year hibernation of irrelevance. But perhaps the most touted VP possibility was New Jersey Governor and Cinnabon storage unit Chris Christie. Chris Christie has dedicated himself so strongly to the Trump campaign ever since he dropped out himself that it's almost borderline on obsession. In fact, it sort of draws comparisons to another pathetic side character that we want to see go away.
Every time I'm faced with a decision, I close my eyes and see the same picture. Whenever I consider an action, I ask myself, will this action help to make this picture a reality? Pull it out of my mind and into the world. And I only act if the answer is yes. A picture of me on the Iron Throne, and you by my side.
But somebody has to pick up Trump's McDonald's orders, so that didn't work either. And since every other Republican that people have actually heard of just wants to pretend this election isn't really happening, Trump had to go to the bench. And to make matters worse, he chose a man with all the personality and charisma of an actual bench.
Indiana Governor Mike Pence was my first choice.
And DeVry was my first choice. Well, we want to get to know this guy, so we'll skip past Trump's remarks and get straight to Mike's speech. We'll skip ahead, 5 minutes?
Hillary Clinton's foreign policy helped launch ISIS.
10 minutes?
I have a friend who's a great builder, and he was better than a pollster. He's better than a consultant. I'd say, how are we doing? And you get a big report that costs you millions of dollars. Doesn't cost me millions. Me, I give him $10,000, okay?
20 minutes?
There are consequences. And those consequences are going to keep companies in our country. It's very simple. And everybody here knows what the consequences are. But I won't say that because I'm much more interested right now in Mike.
It actually took Donald Trump 27 and a half minutes to get Mike Pence on stage. So he must think highly of the guy. He has so much to say. I'm sure he'll stand proudly by his side as he, hey, wait a minute, where are you going? That's all your buddy Mike gets? A pat on the side of this fucking guy. And then you just leave the stage? That's the most unconvincing good luck I've seen since John Kasich's entire family abandoned him at his announcement speech. And, like John Kasich, Mike Pence was left to answer the question on everyone's minds.
Who am I, O Lord?
I don't know how helpful the Lord is going to be on this one. God has to keep track of every person that's ever existed. And right now you're in between the importance of failed vice presidential candidate Whitelaw Reid and the dude who played the president in the 1997 film Absolute Power.
And while this office is an extraordinary office to which to aspire, the highest role I will ever play is D.A.D.
Dry American dullard.
And I'm a proud father of a college student, a graduate turned writer, and a United States Marine.
Sounds like a bunch of kids who don't have jobs, if you ask me. What happened to the great Indiana unemployment numbers, Mike? Where'd the jobs go? Okay, so Mike Pence might not be that exciting on his own, but the whole point is for us to see Trump and Pence together so we can get an idea of their natural chemistry.
But what about the chemistry between you two? You don't really know each other that well.
Okay, maybe not chemistry per se, but they're certainly in line on the issues.
Trump wants to bring back waterboarding and, quote, a hell of a lot more. Are you comfortable with bringing back waterboarding?
I don't think we should ever tell our enemy what our tactics are.
You said negative campaigning is wrong, and a campaign ought to demonstrate the basic decency of the candidate. With that in mind, what do you think about your running mate's campaign and the tone and the negativity of it?
I think this is a good man who's been talking about the issues the American people care about.
I'm not sure how encouraging it is that Mike Pence keeps answering these questions with irrelevant facts. Do you think we should bring back waterboarding? Trump is a really great guy. Do you agree that we should build a wall? I'm not ashamed to admit that I love America. Okay, would you say that your running mate is evil? Pop-Tarts are very interesting because they're not quite cookies, but they're certainly not pastries either. Are we out of time yet? But look, you don't have to agree with your running mate on everything. Just the big stuff, like, I don't know, the Iraq War.
I was against the war in Iraq from the beginning.
Yeah, but you've used that vote of Hillary's, that was the same as Governor
That's right.
Pence,
Many people
as the example of her bad judgment.
Many people have, and frankly, I'm one of the few that was right on Iraq.
Yeah, but what about he?
He's entitled to make a mistake every once in a while.
But she's not. Okay, come on.
But she's not.
She's not.
No, she's not.
Got it.
That's amazing. It was a goof. Just a mistake. Thousands of American soldiers dead. Whoopsie. Everybody slips up every once in a while. And it's very interesting. Trump has discovered that the secret to arguing with rhetorical questions is to answer them.
He's entitled to make a mistake every once in a while.
But she's not. Okay, come on.
But she's not.
She's not.
No, she's not.
Got it.
And that's all he has to do. He just acknowledges that there's no logic to anything that he's saying, and then we have to move on. Now, Trump and Pence might differ on all of the issues, but at least their beliefs are rooted in the backbone of this country, the Constitution. And since Trump's Muslim ban appears to be unconstitutional, then I suppose it must be off the table, right?
The Constitution, there's nothing like it. But it doesn't necessarily give us the right to commit suicide.
Wow. The Bill of Rights. It's a beautiful sentiment, but I'll tell you this. What if someone says something I don't like? You see the problem. Trump and Pence might seem to be diametrically opposed and a terrible pairing, but in reality they're actually very similar, and that Mike Pence would also be a disaster for the country. As governor of Indiana, he signed a bill which A, forbids abortion on the basis of chromosomal abnormalities, and B, requires any aborted or miscarried fetus to be cremated or buried. Infamously, he signed a bill last year that made it legal for Indiana businesses to discriminate against lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender people on basis of religion. He blocked the resettlement of Syrian refugees in his state, and then attempted to block federal aid to Syrian refugees already living in Indiana, as if living in Indiana wasn't punishment enough. A federal judge ultimately ruled that this law clearly constitutes national origin discrimination and in no way directly or even indirectly promotes the safety of Indiana citizens. So, to recap, Mike Pence is a man who makes women bury their miscarriages, allows people to refuse to serve customers because they're gay, and creates unconstitutional laws in order to make refugees poorer. He really is like a diet Trump. Just as unhealthy, but with no caffeine, and far less exciting to see trapped in a vending machine. And that's who the hell Mike Pence is.
When you say Black Lives Matter, that's inherently racist.
Rudy! Okay, you weren't here earlier, so I need to rephrase this in terms you can understand. Okay, when people say never forget 9/11, that doesn't mean that you should forget about everything else that's ever happened, become a shell of your former self, and just rely on the fact that 9/11 happened to keep yourself relevant. But then I guess you never got that memo.